You ever stop and wonder what walked this planet before us? Not 500 years ago, not 5,000, but millions, even hundreds of millions of years before the first human ever took a breath. We talk about history like it's this long, epic story: pyramids, empires, civilizations, but that's not even the prologue. That's the last line on the last page of a book that's been writing itself for billions of years. Before Adam, before thought, before language, there were creatures that ruled this world in ways we can barely imagine. Picture this: jungles thicker than anything alive today, skies darkened by wings that stretched across horizons, oceans full of predators so massive that if they were alive now, we'd be too scared to even swim. These weren't myths, these were the real rulers of Earth. Beasts that didn't need tools or technology, just claws, teeth, and the perfect instinct to survive. We weren't even in the conversation, yet just a potential idea buried somewhere deep in evolution's imagination. And that's what blows my mind. This planet has seen countless empires rise and fall before humanity ever showed up. Whole worlds existed, thrived, and vanished, leaving behind nothing but fossils and mystery. We think we're special because we're here now, but if Earth could talk, it would probably laugh, because we're just the latest rulers in a long line of species who all thought they'd last forever. So let's go back, way back before Adam, before history, before memory. Let's talk about the creatures who ruled the world long before we ever did. You ever stop and think about how tiny our moment in time really is? Like, everyone talks about human history: kings, empires, wars, religion, but that's just the last blip on a cosmic timeline that's been running for billions of years. Before Adam, before any story we've ever told, this planet was teeming with creatures that would make Jurassic Park look like a petting zoo. Imagine this: hundreds of millions of years ago, Earth wasn't just alive, it was wild. Giant insects the size of dogs, lizards that could swallow you whole, oceans packed with monsters that would eat a great white shark for breakfast. We weren't even on the radar yet. We were just a possibility, a thought waiting to happen. And these creatures, they ruled, not with laws or cities or smartphones, they ruled by being built for it. Nature's raw prototypes. The dinosaurs ran the show for over 165 million years. Think about that. Humans, we've barely been around for 300,000. We're like the new kids on the block, acting like we own the neighborhood, when there were civilizations of creatures before us that thrived, evolved, and got wiped out long before we learned how to bang two rocks together. But here's what blows my mind. Every time Earth hit reset, asteroid impacts, volcanic winters, mass extinctions, life came back, smarter, stronger, stranger. It's like nature keeps experimenting, pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Mammals crawling from the shadows after the dinosaurs' extinction, primates learning to walk upright, and eventually, us, the hairless apes who learned to talk about it. And maybe that's the real story. Maybe it's not about who ruled the world, maybe it's about how life keeps finding a way to be here at all. Because if there were creatures before Adam, and there were countless ones, then maybe we're just another chapter in an ancient, ongoing experiment. So yeah, before us, the world was ruled by giants, monsters, and mysteries. We're still digging out of the dirt. But now, it's our turn, and the question is, how long do we get to rule before the next creatures take our place? We're just a blink in the planet's timeline. You ever stop and really think about how short our time here has been? I mean, we walk around acting like we're the main characters in Earth's story, but in the grand timeline of this planet, we've only been around for the last few seconds. If Earth's entire history were a 24-hour day, humans wouldn't even show up until 11:59 and 59 seconds. The dinosaurs had their reign that lasted hundreds of millions of years. They lived, evolved, and dominated this planet for so long that our entire written history wouldn't even register as a footnote in their time. And yet, here we are, acting like everything that ever mattered started with us. It's kind of humbling or terrifying, depending on how you look at it. Think about it. Before humans, before cities, before fire, this planet was already ancient. There were forests taller than skyscrapers, oceans deeper and stranger than we can imagine, and creatures so alien, looking they'd make Hollywood CGI artists jealous. We talk about history like it started with the pyramids, but Earth was already writing stories long before any human hand carved stone. Massive dragonflies the size of hawks buzzed through prehistoric jungle. Amphibians crawled from swamps onto land for the first time, setting the stage for everything that came after. That's not mythology, that's science. It's reality that sounds more fantastic than any fiction. And what's really crazy is that these ancient worlds, the ones before Adam, before us, they weren't just primitive or chaotic, they were balanced. Every predator had a purpose, every cycle of life played its part. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. The Earth didn't need humans to function, it thrived without us. The idea that we're the pinnacle of creation, that's just ego talking. Nature doesn't care about consciousness, it cares about adaptation. And back then, the rulers of the world were whatever species had cracked the survival code for that moment in time. So, when you step back and look at the scope of it, all the ancient oceans, the lost continents, the rise and fall of entire species, you realize something powerful. Life has always been temporary, but it's persistent. It doesn't stop, it just changes form. And right before we came along, there were creatures, apex predators, kings of the earth who thought their rule would last forever too. But then something happened, something that wiped the slate clean and made way for us. The reign of the beasts before us, before we ever showed up, before tools, before language, before thought the world belonged to monsters, real ones. We're talking about eras where nature wasn't just wild, it was relentless. The oceans were filled with predators the size of buses, their jaws lined with rows of teeth that could snap a whale in half. On land, creatures like the Tyrannosaurus rex, Spinosaurus, and Giganotosaurus ruled with sheer physical dominance. They didn't need intelligence or technology, their entire existence was about raw survival. Every day was a test of evolution, and only the strongest, fastest, or most cunning made it through. To those creatures, they were the peak of creation. They had no idea that their empire would one day turn to dust, buried under layers of rock and time. But here's what blows your mind. The dinosaurs weren't even the first rulers. Long before them, during the Permian period over 250 million years ago, Earth was home to beasts like Dimetrodon, a reptilian predator with a sail on its back that dominated the land before dinosaurs even existed. Imagine that a world ruled by creatures that look like they came straight out of a fever dream. The air was thicker, the continents were fused together, and life was experimenting, trying to figure out what worked. Then came the Great Dying, a mass extinction so devastating it wiped out nearly 90% of all life, and yet, life came back. It rebuilt itself, stronger, stranger, more adaptable than before. When the dinosaurs finally took over, they didn't just live, they thrived. For over 165 million years, these creatures evolved into every imaginable form, massive long, necked herbivores that stretched into the clouds, pack, hunting predators, winged reptiles gliding over volcanic plains. Imagine being alive, then the ground shaking under the weight of a sauropod, the air filled with the sound of creatures communicating in roars that echoed for miles. This was their planet, and they ruled it with no rival in sight. Evolution was their crown, and time was their kingdom. And then, in one cosmic blink, it all ended. A rock from space, a burst of light brighter than anything life had ever seen. And in a matter of days, the rulers of the earth were gone. The age of beasts collapsed, the planet went dark, cold, and empty again, but extinction, as brutal as it sounds, is never the end. It's a reset button, and from the ashes of those fallen giants, something new began to crawl out of the shadows. Because when the monsters fell, it opened the door for the mammals, the quiet survivors, to rise. The rise of the mammals and the dawn of humanity, when the smoke cleared and the last dinosaur fell silent, the world was basically reset. Imagine that a planet wiped clean, its rulers gone, and in their place silence. No thunderous footsteps, no prehistoric roars, just the soft rustle of small creatures emerging from the darkness. These were the mammals, the survivors. Tiny, fragile, living in the shadows for millions of years while the dinosaurs ruled the earth. They didn't have claws like razors or teeth the size of knives. What they had was adaptability. They could hide, endure, evolve, and in a world that had just been through apocalypse, that was the ultimate superpower. For millions of years, these small, warm, blooded creatures carved out a living in a planet still healing from catastrophe. The air was clearing, forests were regrowing, and evolution started tinkering again. Mammals began to diversify, some returned to the seas, becoming whales and dolphins. Others took to the skies, turning into bats. Some grew larger and stronger, filling the empty spaces the dinosaurs left behind. It's wild to think about every creature alive today, from elephants to mice, owes its existence to those tiny survivors who clung to life while everything else perished. They didn't conquer the world through strength, they did it through patience, instinct, and the ability to adapt when everything else failed. And eventually, out of that long line of survivors, something extraordinary began to emerge. Somewhere in the forests and savannas of Africa, a different kind of creature started to rise. These weren't the biggest or the fastest or the fiercest, but they were curious. They began to stand upright, look around, and use their hands to shape the world around them. They discovered tools, fire, language. The first sparks of thought, real, abstract thought, flickered in their brains. For the first time in Earth's entire history, a species wasn't just surviving in nature. It was understanding it, and that changed everything. That was the moment the story of before Adam began to fade into the story of us. From those early mammals came the primates, and from them humans. We were the latest experiment in a chain billions of years long, but the question that's haunted us ever since is simple: are we the final product, or just the next chapter? Because if nature's history tells us anything, it's that no ruler lasts forever, and even humanity's reign might one day face its own extinction event. The fragile rule of humanity, now here we are the so-called apex species. The top of the food chain, the planet's new rulers. We've built cities that touch the clouds, sent machines to other planets, and mapped out the code of life itself. On paper, it looks like we've won evolution. But here's the twist: for all our technology, all our intelligence, our rule might be the most fragile of them all. Every empire before us, reptilian, mammalian, even microscopic, thought it would last forever. But nature doesn't play favorites. She gives the crown to whoever adapts best to the current moment, and takes it back the second they stop evolving. That's the reality we don't like to face. Our dominance is temporary, and the planet doesn't owe us anything. Think about how dependent we are on systems we barely understand. A solar flare, a virus, an asteroid, a shift in the climate, any one of those could take us down faster than we could tweet about it. We're so comfortable in our dominance that we forget how precarious it is. Dinosaurs ruled for 165 million years. We've only been here for a blink. And yet, we act like we're untouchable, like we've mastered nature, instead of coexisting with it. But if there's one thing history keeps screaming at us, it's that nature always collects her debt. She doesn't care about intelligence, she doesn't care about technology, she cares about balance. And right now, we're the species throwing everything out of balance. The irony is almost poetic. The very intelligence that gave us the power to dominate this world might be the thing that ends us. We've built weapons that could erase entire continents, machines that change the planet's temperature, and digital systems that could collapse our civilization with one wrong line of code. We've become our own asteroid, our own extinction event. We keep pushing limits, breaking natural laws, thinking we're evolving, but maybe we're just speeding up the timer on our own downfall. Every great ruler in Earth's history met its end not because it wasn't powerful, but because it couldn't adapt to the change that came next. And that's the question that should keep us up at night. What comes after us? If the planet has seen giants, monsters, and gods of evolution rise and fall, why would we be any different? The same forces that shaped us are still out there patient, waiting. Maybe they're already at work, in the depths of the ocean, in the silence of a rainforest, or hidden in a lab somewhere, evolving into whatever's next. Because the story of life on Earth isn't about who rules, it's about who survives the fall. The eternal cycle, so maybe that's the truth about life on this planet. It's never really ours to rule. We're just renting time on a rock that's been spinning through space for billions of years. Long before Adam, long before thought, there were creatures who lived, evolved, and vanished, each thinking they were the final chapter. And now it's us, staring into the same void, convinced we're the ones who'll outlast the storm. But Earth doesn't care about our stories. It doesn't care about our myths, our cities, or our egos. It just keeps going, and when we're gone, it'll keep writing new chapters without us, like it always has. But maybe that's not something to fear, maybe it's something to respect. Because there's a strange beauty in knowing we're part of this endless experiment. We come from the same dust that made the dinosaurs, the same stardust that forged the first spark of life. We're connected to every creature that ever lived, every organism that ever fought to survive. The only difference is we're the first ones who can understand it. We can look back, see the entire timeline of life, and realize what it really means to be alive right now, in this brief, fragile moment. Our ancestors before Adam ruled through instinct. The beasts before us ruled through power. But we rule through awareness. That's our gift, and maybe our curse. Because awareness brings responsibility. We can destroy the world, or we can protect it. We can end the cycle, or we can make sure it continues long after we're gone. The choice is ours for as long as nature allows us to make it. So when you look up at the stars tonight or dig your hand into the dirt, just remember you're touching a story that's billions of years old. A story written by fire, stone, and survival. And whether we're the beginning of something greater or just another name in the fossil record, the wheel of life keeps turning. Because before Adam, there were creatures who ruled the world, and after us, there will be more.